next session is going to be something a little unique. We haven't done this before, and I was asked by Sherry to participate right at the last moment. You guys know me, I love a microphone, so I said yes. But we're going to do something today, talk a little bit about healthcare, and talk about some of the insurance requirements we have, some of the insurance needs, what happens when you have a need for a claim for an insurance. So I'm going to let these fine gentlemen introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
My name is Andrew Morris. I'm a executive general adjuster with Ingle Martin. So we do property insurance adjusting. So if you have a water claim, fire claim, whatever it may be, we come out and adjust those for the insurance companies.
My name is John Smith. I'm a night commercial. I am the director of environmental and healthcare. 22 years doing this stuff, so unfortunately I sleep it. Same thing with asbestos and mold. So if you need anything, call me. Like I said, it's.
So when we were putting this together, and we talked about, first thing, we get a lot of vendors that want to participate, and Sherry said they want to do something, so thank you very much. And my first thing I always say is, can't be a commercial. We're here for information, and that wasn't even a question for these guys. They never had any intent. So we want you to ask questions. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can do to prepare for. We're going to talk about some of those things when you actually have a claim that you need to do, whether it be with any particular insurance company or not. But I know this brings forth a lot of questions, why I think it's going to be a really good presentation. All right? So we're going to start with a little bit of an overview, and you can see here we're going to talk about the current trends in healthcare property claims. These guys are experts in the industry. They deal a lot with what has happened, what's going on. I can tell you about a few we've had recently with Piedmont. I'm sure most of you in the room have something where you've had to deal with this here lately. Critical system failures and their impact. What happens when you lose water supply? What happens when you lose steam supply? Your boiler's down. When I was talking to this group originally, you got to understand, when you lose your boiler and you can't get it to come back up, you lose steam. What happens when you lose steam in a hospital?
Sterilization. Stuff starts leaking.
Stuff starts leaking. That's a good point. It's not what the service you lose when it comes back on.
Yeah.
It's a
Maintenance goes to work. What services do you lose?
Ask me how I know. You lose your sterilizer.
You lose sterilization. When you lose sterilization, what happens in the OR?
OR's gonna run.
ORs go down. When ORs don't happen, what happens?
Leadership go crazy.
Leadership goes crazy.
You prepare your resume.
And thank you, John. I was going to ask, in the famous words, Tang Waller once told me when I was a very young guy, if I didn't get something done right, it's a career-enhancing opportunity. All right, water damage prevention. What you saying, John?
So in reference to that, what we're going to talk about is a mitigation plan. That way you have something ahead of the time that all the people are there. You identify your bad areas, have a response team, have your capacities of your subs that are coming in, and make sure you quantify them so you know what they can do and can't do, and then how to audit it at the end of it so you can actually train off of it and go from there.
All right. We're also talking about equipment breakdown. When you're losing your equipment, other things still have to go on. I tell contractors a lot on the contracting side, healthcare doesn't stop because you're in the building. Healthcare doesn't stop when our equipment breaks down. We got to get some things done. And then last, engineering controls and risk management strategies. Now, so we're going to try to cover all this in the hour. Please, as George indicated when he was up here, if you've got questions, ask them along the way. And then of course, we'll be here for a while as well. All right? I'll let you take the trends.
Well, obviously with global warming, we're seeing a major increase in natural disasters. I'm sure a lot of y'all were affected by Hurricane Helene coming through in a way that Georgia's really never been impacted by a hurricane, not in quite a while. So we're starting to see more and more of those type of effects where these storms are staying strong, moving in here, not just Florida getting hit, but kind of continue to move through. It seems all the healthcare equipment, it's got a lot more going on with it than it used to. So, we got experts in the industry that can help us diagnose those machines, see what's going on with them, repair versus replacing them. Not only is it cost effective, but is it more time effective? Can we get those machines up and running? Can we get them back warrantied with the manufacturers? What can we do to get it back online that much quicker? And then with the claims, water damage is always number one. We see so much water damage, whether it be from equipment leak, pipe leak, storm damages. And And those, even with fire losses, the bigger they're with the fire losses, the water damage. It's not so much the fire damage, it's the water damage that comes afterwards. So almost everything we do centers, it seems, mainly around water.
Let me ask you a question, and it's strictly an opinion. You guys can have a different opinion than me or him and still be friends. If you have a pretty severe water leak into your facility and you have carpet on the floor, what do you guys do? What should we do? And then I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. What if it's sewage water?
Well, sewage water is a totally different animal. Sewage water, there's no question about it. It comes out.
Y'all hear that?
No question.
Guys,
Comes out.
don't let your hospital folks that don't want to spend money tell you to clean the carpet when it's sewage water. That's a bad mistake.
No, I mean it's the same as any type of biohazard. We're not trying to save something with raw sewage on it or biohazard on it. It has to come out.
Their term is black water when restoration comes and the insurance comes black water, and it's our deal. If it's black water, there's not a question.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to that, and I use this a lot in presentations, and George kind of alluded to it at the front there. It's all about the patients and the patient pending memory. And I have a really good, a lot of you in the room know about this, experience over the last couple of weeks with my daughter in the hospital. When it's your patient, when that patient is your loved one, when that patient means a lot to you, are you going to put them on that carpet that was cleaned yesterday from black water? No. I had to throw that one in, sorry.
In reference to that also, any porous material, it could
Yep.
be your drywall, that type of stuff.
Yeah, any of that category 3 black water.
Make sure you have that in there. You know, if it comes through the plenum, there's different regulations and recommendations from IICRC that dictate that. So if you need those information, I can send those to you. So your higher ups can go, hey, well, we can clean this. No, you can't. This is why. Again, it comes back to a liability issue. And been to court, been to testifying, you don't want to do that. So you don't want to have anything to do with that stuff.
All right, good deal. All right, this one, Mark, this should look real familiar to you. Mark Tangbo. We just wanted some type of real world event to kind of kick things off, and I chose one. This was at our hospital, Piedmont Columbus Regional Midtown, and because of what it was and us not knowing at the time what was going to be claimed, what wasn't, I probably did a little bit better job than I normally do on putting together an after action report. So we could report everything down. I had everyone report to us. But back in 2022, it was your normal day, so to speak. Had little storms, and what proved to be a straight line wind, not a tornado. And one of the good things I wanted to bring this up with you, when our insurance underwriters came on and we were talking about the weather and what's done, I've got a weather app. And I was able to go to my command center and pull the weather app and tell them exactly what time and how strong the wind was. And that was very useful to them in doing their assessment as well. Some of the key responses that we got out of this that I saw individually, I got the notification that something had happened, and I'm like, well, the first thing was there's a water leak up on 4th floor. And then it's a really bad water leak and we're moving patients. By the way, that is our mother-baby unit. And so what I remember so well, and I told these guys when we talked earlier, it's all the communication, the culture, the friendliness you have between staffs and how your organization works, and training. Now, had we ever trained for a drill to move patients in an emergency on that floor? We had not. We had done a little bit of evacuation education in the past, but I was truly amazed when I walked up on the floor. Let me back up and tell you, Mark, I believe it was 120 feet of roof, about 30 feet wide. It got rolled over. And when it did, it pulled the roof drains out with it. So we're, literally pouring down rain. And so not only is the roof gone, there's 2 holes up there this big. There's a total of 6 patient rooms in those areas with water just flooding in. What I witnessed, to me, was, it really made me feel good. When I opened the door and walked in, and I was there probably within 2 minutes. Seriously, my office is down the bottom floor, 3rd floor, and I had to go to the next floor up. And what I saw was the chief nursing officer with a squeegee pushing water out the way. What I saw was maintenance guys pushing beds. What I saw was security guards standing there at boat entrances. He didn't care if he knew you or not. If you didn't have a badge, you wasn't getting in. what I saw was nursing staff, one of them actually riding on the bed as it was being pushed. We had to move 6 patients immediately, and all of that work that we had done together made that successful. Of course, it wasn't successful for Ruth and for facilities for the next several days, but it was a really good come-together moment that showed me that, guys, all these things that you can do and talk about, you need to look at those. We just had a recent activity. Where's Terry Osby? Tell them what happened in Rockdale.
Good old fire right across 3 miles down the road. We got the worst looking fire cloud you've ever
So when I got there with Terry, I happened to be riding by, and word came in, the local EMA had just told Terry, you got to evacuate this hospital. 141 patients. 11 ambulances within the next 40 miles. That's enough. I'd do a whole presentation on that one, can't we, Jerry? But some of these things you can't make up. You got to prepare for. So getting prepared for this stuff we're talking about today is also very important.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And you may be going through it or not. From your perspective, what do you look for in a claim like that? What kind of documentation do you look for?
Like,
Okay, speak up.
like what, like the fire, or like just a typical claim?
The
So
roof claim?
repeat the question. Repeat the question so everybody.
Oh, she asked, what would we look for from a claims perspective when we're dealing with a roof loss like this? You know, what information can y'all already have prepped? So when the adjuster walks on site, we can go, hey, here's how we can get things started. You know, any of that weather, any of that firsthand account of what went on, any action you took from the time that event happened to the time we got on site is always really important. You know, we don't want you leaving the roof wide open in that case. So you're going to go minimize that damage. We need to know what those steps were. So when we look at it, we can go, okay, that's what they had to do. This is the damage. As we go through the process, maintenance records are something we always like to look for. How old things are, who installed it originally, if we know, any recent maintenance done on it. Those are all kind of keys as we're getting started, as well as any vendors you may have already brought in or you're planning to bring in.
I was going to say, that brought us up good. I do this to him, and he does it me a lot. Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell us about that day with that roof. And I know we had really good response from insurance, but I believe you called in a roofing company. You did tell us about that.
Yeah, well, the first thing we did was get as many big burly guys as we could. Because what it did is just split this TPO roof, flashing and all. Wind picked it up, split it over, exposing about a third of that roof. I think we had 34 big burly guys to go
I was one of those.
pick that thing up and just walk it back and drop it down. That way we're minimized. Yeah, we couldn't budge that roof with 33 guys, so that went away pretty quickly. But back to what you were talking about before, with people working together and things like that, when the insurance folks actually came in, you know, because everything's pretty much taken care of then temporarily, and he's asking me questions like, how many people responded? And that's where, you know, we got Jerry and we started counting up. And he said, how about ceiling tiles? How many ceiling tiles are your places? Give me all this information, and I'm kind of wondering where he's going. Well, they went back and added all that to the claim.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody was there for 3 hours, a nurse for 3 hours, sweeping water, then the pay that she got for 3 hours went to this claim. So, you know, it was to that extent, I guess.
It's hard to keep records during disasters, but you really need to think about it.
Yeah, to that point, on larger losses, I've had a lot of clients that have been able, depending on their payroll system, set up a separate pay code or pay category, and they've been able to, everything for that claim, anybody who's doing tasks associated with a claim as opposed to their normal job function, they're funneling into there. I mean, I'm dealing with a assisted living facility right now whose entire laundry facility burned down. So we had to bring in a trailer, but they've got all these extra labor hours because they were taking laundry off site, and they kept track of all that. So we're reimbursing them for all that additional labor they've had to spend out. But that goes for anybody, any of your maintenance people, any of your building engineers.
What kind of record keeping do y'all have to have for that?
It can vary from carrier to carrier. You know, what I usually like to see is the hours they're presenting. I usually like to see something that shows what the normal hours would have been, especially like this laundry, for instance, because they normally do laundry, right? You're doing laundry kind of all day long in those type of facilities. So, hey, we normally spend 80 hours a week, but now we're spending 120. We need to see that offset, because what insurance is looking for is what's that offset over what you normally have to do. So anything, you know, that you can document previous to the loss versus after the loss is helpful for us to calculate that. If not, we can extrapolate, and we always try to work with the customer as best we can on
I
that.
mean, the few times I've had to work with insurance companies over the years, generally they're your friend. And like Mark said, that our insurance underwriter that day, he taught us a lot about what we could claim. You know, we're talking about ceiling tiles, and then he wanted to know what was happening below. Just so happened we had some very serious expensive equipment below that got covered up timely, thank goodness, again from there. But then he asked who did that, what was out of normal, and all that's part of it.
To answer your first question, though, back when you'd asked the question, the main thing we had to do was once we could tarp and drape those penetrations, we still had exposed concrete deck that obviously is not waterproof, but that was slow leaking. But once we got the penetrations covered in, we pretty much had the flood under control. Then we just had some soup.
You remember what that total cost was?
$290,000.
We're not talking about a little bit of roof. Right?
So I can keep my materials management VP off my back for linen, because when I'm flooding a space, I don't care about the linen.
Right?
I use it as a dam until I can get there.
Absolutely.
And he gets ticked off that nurses use the linen, so, but all that can be written off too.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I mean, if it's something that's damaged, contaminated, we can't clean it, we can't sterilize it, it's part of the claim. We're going to replace it. If it's, we had to use it and it had to be, now it can be reused, but it has to be laundered. We can consider those laundering fees, because it's directly related to helping mitigate anything that's going on to try to lessen the loss, shorten the time span, shorten the money being spent, whatever. We're going to try to consider every bit of that.
I'm going to finish up this session here, but I do want to talk about these two things here. The importance of well-documented after-action review for continuous improvement. That is so important for multiple reasons, and today we're talking about the insurance claim. And when we did that, again, Mark started asking me questions, so I basically got interviews out, and I got reports from nursing, I got written reports from nursing, from administration, from security, from EVS, from facility, and I put it all together in a document, which really helped us when it come time for the claim. However, that's also very important for an emergency management standard. So you got a lot of things you have to report for emergency management, and it all can combine in one after-action report. And that after-action report, it really becomes a useful tool. Sherry, put you on the spot. I sent it to her. What did you see with my after-action report? What did you think of
It
it?
was very thorough. It was very detailed.
And you have to think about writing those. If you know there's a possibility of having to claim insurance on something that you've documented as an emergency, whether it be an actual drill or an actual event, think about it. And I hate to say it because I don't like it, but it's just so true. When you start to write that document, think lawyer. Mm-hmm. What are they going to ask? How much detail can you put in? And honestly, you can't put too much detail in. Then you get into the whole side of the regulatory and the legal side, where what's discoverable or what's not. So a caution as well, if there's something that you shouldn't be discoverable in a legal case, it shouldn't be an after-action document because it is a discoverable document. However, your risk reporting, your safety reporting mechanism, whatever it may be, is not. So that is protected. When you put things, ours is an RL system, and what goes into our RL system is a protected document. There is a difference. You need to learn between the two.
So I just want to put John on the spot, but
Okay.
so from this perspective, just kind of discuss the importance of doing it the right way, even though.
Correct.
Yeah.
So whatever contractors you have coming in, whether it's for the water mitigation, your cleaning and disinfection, make sure they're covering the IP infectious policies, procedures of the hospital, and that they have the capacities and the training and the knowledge to do that prior to using them. A lot of times it's, I got this one guy, he's great, I use him all the time, I have no problems. Problem is when it comes to that emergency response, if they don't have all that stuff in place, it's gonna cost you guys. If they don't do the proper documentation every day, if they don't audit their stuff, if their equipment's not done with the proper pictures, they're gonna come back and go, well, I'm not paying for that because I don't see any proof of it. You know what I mean? So, and part of that mitigation plan is gonna be, we'll go back, I don't do crystals, but when you do the training, again,
So, if, like, I've got a restoration company that does most of my work,
Mhm.
and they're doing a good job, but if it's a natural disaster, you may not get them. How far do you go as a second tier, having this?
2 or 3.
second company, you know?
I would say 2 or 3.
I would say 2 or 3.
100%, because every company's gonna have that client that they take care of, and unfortunately, you may be a day behind them, and they put 50 guys on a job, now you're stuck with maybe 3 or 4 that they could pull. You know what I mean? Your job is the most important, so you have to have them people in place and make sure they're qualified to do the work. You know what I mean?
And if
They
I
may
can,
not-
go ahead, I'm sorry, if I can piggyback on that, it's not just having that vendor and a 2 or 3, it's making sure you've got someone already vetted that can handle a major loss. We were talking about that biolab fire in Conyers. I've got a fire that I'm dealing with in a manufacturing plant, but we are talking a multi-million-dollar just for cleaning. I mean, we're talking 5-6 million just to clean these buildings. It has to be a firm large enough that can handle that. Who they usually call in was not equipped to do that. So same thing here, you know, if a little bit of water, 2 or 3 rooms is one thing. If the whole building goes down, you know, major hurricane, something like that, you need a vendor who is equipped and big enough to throw 60, 70, 80 people on a job and get that building dried out. So you almost have to have 2 levels of your local guys, you know, that you usually use, 2 or 3 levels there, then 1 or 2 really big nationals that are ready to respond on a really big loss.
And that's all part of your pre-mitigation plan. It's not only slides, but I have copies of templates. If you guys want to come grab them from our booth, I think I have a bunch of them, or we can print some. If not, I can email it to you. But it just goes through what you need to have in place. Again, know their capacities, know what kind of equipment they have, know what their training is. You know, is it going to be ICR? Is it going to be HAZWOPER? You know, that's going to make a difference on how they respond, or if they can even respond. You know, so I know they're your buddies and stuff like that, and they might do your small stuff, but make sure you're ready for that big loss, because all that time and energy is going to be lost if you don't have that in place.
All right, let's move on.
Critical systems, I'd say.
All right. Out of sight, out of mind, when you're looking at your safety critical systems, look at all those essential systems that you have to have and what's going to happen without them. And I will go over to the utility side. We've recently at Piedmont had a water loss through the night. Guys, there's one thing you'll figure out really quick. You're not going to stay afloat very long without water. You know, steam's going to hurt you. You can stay open. You're not going to make any money while steam's out. You can stay open. But then we've got sitting within this room. If I have a big need for power because something's happened, you can get a portable generator and get it hooked up. You can get a portable chiller and get it hooked up. All right? What type of insurance do you have that can cover that? Do they cover that situation? So when you're looking at what's critical to you, somewhere along the lines, and it should be in your risk department, and we have our own dedicated risk managers at our facilities within Piedmont. But all that comes into play, they'll start asking all kinds of questions. And I'll tell you, sometimes you may get a little aggravated. Why does she want to know that? Well, when something happens, you're going to be glad that he or she knows that information up front. What is the probability? I'll give you a great example. We had that water failure at one of our facilities, and where I am, I knew that there was a loop around the building, but honestly, I didn't know enough about it, so I called my predecessor to there at some point in time, which again was Mark and Tank, and started looking at it, and I learned something that day. I have a main feed into the campus, and then it splits off and goes to potable and fire, and the meter's sitting on the potable side. The fire loop goes all the way around the building. The potable stops at the back of the building. So if I had an issue with potable, can I feed it with my fire loop? Here's a question for you. Can I feed my domestic water with my fire loop? Yeah, that's where I was. I had no clue. What I learned was, if I can tap into it before it hits that backflow, before it hits that post indicator valve, it's still potable water. So what I'm doing now, for prevention purposes, is I have had the guy buy all the stuff to hook up to the fire plug, I do have a water connection on my building. It's never been hooked the two together, God only knows what's in there. It is potable because, you know, we flush it every year with our stream test and all that. So I'm gonna set up that I can make sure I can get that connection there, and then I do. At some point in time, I'm gonna actually run the building on it before I have to run the building on it. I got two hands come up. Terry's first.
I just did this Tuesday, this week, as a matter of fact, we had a backflow, we went to replace the backflow, we felt building A, we shut the whole building down, so I had to go rent a meter from the county, put on my water fire hydrant outside and refeed it with 2-inch lines. I might have gone through the ductwork to put an access valve to get the line down and redo
Yeah.
it.
So, and when you doing that, was you doing that just normal testing or was it a failure?
It was not, to replace the, backflow, I had to refeed the building.
Yeah.
We did it in December, shut the building down, found out we had a problem, so I had to go rent a meter. It's $13.50 in Earth County to rent a meter. You gotta go pay for it by personal check and go pick it up.
Wow.
That was a
So
whole-
yeah, and Terry's talking about exactly what I was trying to get to point to you guys. Guys, go ahead and think about this stuff. Think about your critical systems. What are you gonna do when you need to be prepared before it happens? Mark, take your hand up.
Perfect, we'll segue into that. Well, we're looking at Piedmont, you think about, because we have lost water in 3 hospitals over the last year. Fortunately, it was short-lived, we got everything back going, but we realized, you know, we've had some medium-sized hospitals, and when I was going around the facilities, I would see a well, and of course, it's got cobwebs all over because they don't use it. But in one of our hospitals that lost water, you don't realize how critical it was that we had a 2-inch well, because that well provided tower water. You think about it, you're just doing makeup water in your towers, not much water. And the plant, so we had boiler feed for steam. Everything else, you can do non-potable water and drinking water, bottled water, and keep your building going. But you gotta have chillers, you gotta have boilers for steam to run a lot of your processes. So what I'm telling you is think outside the box. A 2-inch well, on an average, is $10,000 to $15,000. That's pocket change to that building being down for 4 hours.
He'd rather have you that back than come to him with a $2 million claim.
Absolutely.
Jonathan?
I love the ideas and everything, but for heaven, make sure you got IP involved. Make sure you have a process in place to make sure that that water, you're talking about water systems that barely move water at any time. They are
And again, it's stagnant, it could have glycol in it, it depends on the system.
Oh, yeah, and you could kill people.
Yeah, that goes without saying.
Yeah, so
You
be
do that.
very
Yeah.
careful when
Yeah.
you're looking at.
Like I said, we talking about well water, domestic water you feed the kitchen with? No, that doesn't mix. I mean, you can,
Well,
but then you gotta do a whole lot of testing, clarification.
but again, remember, we need to think of this because we're serving patients.
Yeah,
Immunocompromised individuals need to have water that's been properly treated and doesn't have pathogens.
And
absolutely.
it has to be
And there's
documented.
processes for
And
it.
that's the
Has
key.
to
It
be
has to have the
documented.
testing. That's what I said, when we're looking at
Don't
wells,
assume.
what Mark is talking about is keeping cooling towers, keeping boilers, keeping those things. I do gotta tell y'all real quick, cause this one happened so recently. Everybody knows about Hurricane Helene and the issue, and Augusta was in a mess, and Mark had to get crews to go up there and all that stuff. One of the situations was getting water hooked up. I was telling John Banko this story last night, getting water hooked up. And we had someone there, and I won't call any names, I won't even call any positions, but the whole goal was to get the water truck hooked up. We had 7,000 gallon tankers of water sitting there. So when they finally got it, and we had to call on someone else to come help us, thanks Zach for sending some crew over, to get things. So it was almost like a little mini celebration of the water truck's hooked up, we got a pump, we now have good clean water back in the hospital. We're good, we can move on.
30 minutes. How long you got?
How much water we use a day? Well, I don't know.
Yeah. 200,000 gallons.
Mark, I need a water bill for Piedmont Augusta now. Help me now. 14 minutes later, the man sent me a water bill from Piedmont Augusta. I go back to that person and say, excuse me a moment, you have 1 hour and 18 minutes worth of water. A 3-4 million square foot facility and 7,000 gallons of water, guys, plan. That's not gonna fix your problem. Somebody in the back? Yes, sir.
What is the hookup and disconnect time between those trucks? You got 7,000 gallons rolling in,
We got the water back, and I don't know that we ever had to get the issue marked. We never had to hook the second one up. But at that point in time, it's couplings. I mean, basically, it'll be
Quick
fire-
disconnects.
Yeah, quick fire hose stop.
But again, that goes back part of your mitigation plan. Make sure you have your contractors or subs in place that can capacitate that for you if it ever
Yeah,
happens.
and see, we didn't. We struggled. We do now. But we struggled when they had a company bring us a truck. We had no way to hook the two, and then when they finally figured out we could get somebody in with a plumbing capability to hook it up, where's the pump? That truck's not gonna push water into that building. Building's this tall, truck's this tall. All right?
You'll have to run through a pump. So again, on your water damage prevention and mitigation strategies, it basically comes down to having a plan prior to a catastrophe. Does anybody here have mitigation plans in place? Okay. Do you guys follow them? Do you guys test them? Do you guys audit them? Or is it just something you guys write and go, if anything ever happens, this is over here?
A lot of our insurance companies made us get a water plan and get a cart and get a tarp and get some stuff, and honestly, that's probably about all we did with it.
Yep. Yeah, so again, make sure you have maintenance programs, scheduled maintenance, identify your problem areas, try and get them fixed. Again, I know it's a revenue-based thing, and they're gonna be like, well, why do I have to do that? You know what I mean? Well, here's why, and just document it to your higher-ups that, hey, if I have this loss, this is what it possibly could cost. Advanced leak detection systems, technology's going crazy anymore, so those are available.
That's a good question. I'm glad you said that. Tang, talk about what they just told us in leak detection.
What's that now?
Leak detection or MRIs, CTs.
Yeah, they're coming up with the issue of coming in and saying that we have got to install, we have to evaluate above any critical equipment such as MRs, CTs, linear accelerators, and all that. We've got to identify in the ceilings any water feeds and establish and set up leak detection systems that will alert you if there's anything leaking in those areas.
Are y'all doing anything like that?
So who's making you do that? Your insurance,
Your
DMV,
insurance,
Joint Commission?
Well, no, insurance, they can't make you do anything down.
Right.
They recommend.
They're recommending
They've
it.
got it on a highly recommended basis to start installing these devices. There's a lot of things that the insurance company comes in and says, we want to see this. But when you evaluate what they're asking for, one, it's not code. Two,
Yep.
it is only there to protect their investment. So you have to evaluate the cost. I'm
Correct.
not saying not do it, but you have to evaluate the cost of doing it versus, okay, now, is my premium going to reduce when I do it?
And that's sometimes a communication that is between the insurance people and the higher ups that you have no involvement in, and they don't understand the cost per. In reference to the cost of that policy.
Our insurance person in Piedmont to say, hey, they're asking me to do this. It's not code, but it's gonna cost us this.
Yep.
Can you tell me whether or not we're gonna have that savings on the other end? And her answer was, well, that's a very good question, I'll find out. And ever since I asked that question, I hadn't heard any more back from her.
Are y'all doing anything on that nature?
You know, I know some carriers are. We work for various carriers, so I know some carriers are looking for that. I know in a lot of cases there is some kind of discount there, whether it be, hey, you've got this, so we're going to reduce the premium. Others, like to your point, are trying to reduce their risk on the building of, hey, instead of having $1 million loss, we're catching this right away, and there's either no loss or it's a $20,000 loss, or they are trying to hedge some of that. All I can say, devil's advocate on the other side, is while there is some cost involved, and yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a pain to do all that. The flip side of that is you have a loss, and it comes down on that critical equipment, and you're shut down for a week, a month, depending on what your lead times are. Start doing that math and figuring out,
That
ultimately.
business interruption, you'll get that payment back on the claim.
Because business interruption is great, but I can promise you, as hard as we work at it, it's not the same as being able to operate at full steam like you're used to operating.
Another thing we're doing related to that now, we send our drawings, our design drawings to the insurance underwriter for review, and then we just eliminate that issue, so we don't run any type of equipment above that type of equipment, you're right. So it's, it works on both sides.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you got an insurance company recommending something such as this,
Fire damage because you were supposed to have sprinklers. So it depends on how it's written in the policy. Usually though, if they're requiring that, it's because the system's oftentimes already in place, and it's more of making sure you're maintaining. You know, we get fire sprinklers that have gone offline and nobody bothers fixing them. Okay, well, they were there when they wrote the policy. So, you know, they're not gonna, if the policy is written a certain way where it doesn't require that, if there's a loss, they're not gonna be happy about it, but the loss is still gonna be covered. Now, you know, what they do on the back end when they adjust that
Right.
premium afterwards, there's no guarantee on
And it
how
may
that's
be
gonna
because
go.
of previous claims that they made these recommendations because of
Right. A lot of times
how much they
those,
spent.
History drives.
yeah, a lot of times that's how that comes up with.
Well, I can also say, and off the standpoint in a previous location I was at, depending upon what type of recommendation the insurance company is throwing out there, even though it's not code, they come back around when it's time to renew your policy and they force you into other things. You know, well, we're just gonna raise your policy up over here if you don't meet this, even though it's not code. And I had to do that in a previous place with like breakers and everything else, that we wasn't gonna go in there and triple a 5,000, 4,000 amp breaker under load. Just not gonna do it.
That's based on cost to maintenance too as well, depending on the facility.
Talking about, water mitigation for, and having a place to hook up the truck, we have that, but like you said, if you use 200,000 gallons a day and you got 7,000 gallons, so that's not really an answer, but we went in and found, we had where we had put in a fire pump, we had a branch line off the city main that used to feed an old sprinkler line. And so now I've got an 8-inch and a 6-inch, two separate feeds coming to the building, both have their own RPZ backflow preventers.
Right.
So I've got a redundant, they both, two separate lines feed into the booster pumps, that boost up the potable water pressure. So if we do have a failure on the RPZ, we got.
That's a great backup, but most people
Hey,
don't have that
think-
available.
Think about your water just like your generators.
Yep.
Yeah, we all want N+1.
Your powers,
Now,
your chillers, that
you know,
kind of stuff.
If the municipality fails on the other end, I mean, we're still out, but.
In the very back, you had one?
Yeah, I'm just curious, out of all the places y'all go and seeing all the issues y'all find, what's like the number one common sense thing you would recommend to every hospital here that nobody has?
Have a mitigation plan. Go through it, get your stuff, your bad areas identified. Again, try and do the maintenance on it if you can. Have a response team. Identify who's gonna be involved. You wanna get your IP involved. You wanna get your department heads involved. You definitely wanna get facilities involved and your IH. Make sure they're all involved when you guys sit and write this plan. Because they're all gonna have different aspects and different views of what's gonna happen or what their role is gonna be in that. And again, have someone that's gonna mark down that the nurse was scrubbing water, you know, because that's out of their normal hours. So that's a billable claim.
And John, I'm gonna add to that with your mitigation plan, have a business continuity plan.
Yep.
A BCP. What are you gonna do when it fails? How long can you last? How long can this department function without having a computer? How long can this department function without having water? There's a lot of really good, business continuity plans out there. And your BCP is what are you doing while you're waiting it to get fixed? While you're waiting on parts and supplies, while you're waiting, you know, that, you think about an IT department and an air handler. If you lose the ability to cool your IT equipment, what's gonna happen? How long is it gonna take you to get a new one? And think about those. So I want to throw the BCP
Pretty
in.
good. And then again, isolation, that's a big one. Once you have the mitigation plan in process, make sure you guys train on it and deal with all the departments' problem. Because your first thing is, again, we spoke about is stopping the bleed, right? Everybody wants everything at one time, but you're trying to stop that water and get that area isolated and cleaned up. But you have 15 different departments calling you going, I got no water, I got no this, I got no that. You know what I mean? So have the people in place that can help that and do that. Make sure the proper water mitigation is done. If it's 2 different companies, 3 different companies. There's plenty of,
Let me tell you about Stop the Bleed. I told John this story. We had sewage water coming into a room right beside an OR room a couple of years ago. And when this goes on, of course, people were responding, and Mark and Tane guys, so they were all on it. They were trying to bring in the big 96-gallon dumpster to get it to catch in. They were fighting some plastic on a pipe to get it routed in, and quality and IP walks in the room and they start, you need to do this, you need to do that. And the guys just looked at me, and this is, both of them I would call very, very good friends of mine, our quality director and our infection prevention. And I kind of walked over and I did like this. And this is the words I said. I says, ladies, they got to stop the bleed before they can listen to you. They were nurses. They understood that. Stop the bleed to them means your life is at stake until I stop this blood from coming out of your arm. Then we can deal with what's going on around the rest of you. And I don't know, it was almost magical. It worked like they all of a sudden like, yeah. And they walked out.
And again, IP can be your best friend or they could be your worst nightmare. Make sure you involve them in everything because you want them on your side. You want them to understand what you have to do and why so that they can do what they have to do. And it's all about liability. You know what I mean? It's all covering that patient care. Again, thorough disinfection. Make sure you're using the proper chemicals, that type of stuff. The biggest thing I see is when they use disinfection, they don't allow for the dwell time. They'll spray it on and wipe it off. They don't even know what the dwell time is, if it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes for whatever chemical it is that you guys approved for your facilities. So again, that is part of that mitigation plan when you sit with your contractors and IP and everything else in facilities and say, hey, just so you know, we need to go over this stuff so it's done the proper way. You don't have that liability 3 years later when an attorney has 4 years to look at a case, you got half a day to clean it up and get started. So the more you do things the proper way every time on the training and everything else, make sure it's done. Again, we'll go quick next, but on the mitigation plan, again, talk with your people, share amongst yourselves. You guys have probably seen everything between everybody. You guys need to share that information. You know what I mean? If you have a contractor that can cover stuff, make sure you share that information. There's plenty of people out there that will help you do these things. And I don't know if I have do we have a copy of the template?
Not in the previous.
Oh, okay. I can email you guys a template. It kind of just goes over what the main concern is, what the focus is on the identification, the emergency response team, and then the documentation, that's the huge one. And then audit it after. Even if you have a small loss, if you have the time, audit that loss. What went right? What went wrong? What can we change? Who else do I need to involve? Because that's going to make the difference when a big one comes. And we can all get through the small ones day in, day out stuff, but when that big one comes, that's when you're going to be tested.
All right. You got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
When the big ones come, and get ready a few days ahead of time. Don't call us the day of.
No, they wouldn't do that.
So you just do that just more on equipment for your facilities.
Okay. Looking at this one, what do you have in place? We talked about the leak detection already up there, but I do want to focus on your risk management. Guys, everything we do in our world, it should be risk oriented. We've got, the insurance uses risk management strategies. We have a risk department. So when you're thinking about all these things that you have to do, an ILSM and an ICRA is a risk assessment. And put that in everything you do relative to looking at your equipment, looking at what you're going to do with downtime, looking at what you're going to do for business continuity when things go down. What's going to happen when my boiler won't work? You know, all these things, and provide that risk strategy. Think about it ahead of time. And Mark, you just said it great there. Do it days ahead. Don't the day of. I'm telling you, Mark Jacobus can get you a lot of things in John Bank when it comes to emergency power. But they can't do it by 9 o'clock in the morning when you call them at 8:30. I mean, you got to have these things planned out. So think of the risk associated with what you're doing with your risk management strategy, and please include infection control. Infection control drives us today, and this is something I've said for years and years, and I can say I'm happy that in the Columbus team we made a huge effort to do so. Infection preventionists should be one of your best friends. If you are not getting along with your infection preventionist, if you're always combating each other, take him or her to lunch one day and sit down and talk about it. You know, and it's a hard thing to tell somebody. You know me, I got this old country saying, you don't know what you don't know. And then help educate them on what your side is. Trust me, that will help a very long ways if you do that.
In addition to your risk assessment, make sure you include your IH, your CIH, whoever you have a contract with. If you don't, I would get one that you can trust. Again, make sure your policies and procedures are involved from your IP. Also, your rules and regulations of your state, local, federal. Your asbestos surveys. Make sure you have all that stuff intact when you start to remove stuff. Your IH, most of the time, if you don't have, like, it's called ATG software. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's kind of like an as-built, but it covers all your surveys and everything else on your plans. If you don't have it,
Is Joe in the room? I'm gonna see Joe Menzies.
yeah, or you can even use a simple Excel spreadsheet. You know, if you take the floor plan and you put in the number and then your Excel shows that survey for that area. Because you're gonna need that prior too, just to cover your liabilities and the safety of everyone that's doing the work and the patients. So that's all part of it. And again, we only have 5 minutes, but like I said, if I can help anybody, yes.
I have a question. So you have an event that took place, let's say it's a fire, and there's a piece of equipment that triggered it. What is your expectation of keeping that piece of equipment physically on site after?
That depends on investigation or insurance.
So that's a good question. Usually they like it in place so we can come in and investigate it, get an engineer, what have you. If that piece of equipment is in the way and is hindering you getting things started back up, let the carrier know that. Let the insurance adjuster know that, because there are ways to come in, properly pack it up, ship it off to a laboratory where they can do the investigation and the breakdown in the laboratory and clear it out of your space so you can go on and take your next step. So it's just a matter of kind of communicating that need so they can try to make other arrangements for you.
Latoya, in Georgia, we had Neil Brown, our state fire inspector here, last meeting or the day before last. First thing you better do is call him. You better not move it till he gets there. That's on the legal side.
And then on your adjuster side, he may want you to engage a forensic engineer to come out and say, hey, we'll package it up, we'll do this.
Right.
Which is part of the claim, but then it's done by a third party, covers your liabilities, and it's done under their recommendations to understand for the investigation what really happened.
And I think after all that, at times leadership tends to not want to let go of it. And I was trying to wonder what that statute of limitations is.
As far as let go of the equipment, as far as
Well, yeah, it could be a refrigerator, it could have been, you know, something like that that caused a catastrophe.
My thing's most times stuff that's replacement,
Yeah.
let it go, throw it away.
Yeah,
Well, they wanna hold on to it for litigation.
Correct.
So then again, I put it in storage, wrap it in poly, and leave it.
yeah, so what's that statute of limitations?
I guess it all depends on how long the claim's gonna be. Once they close the claim,
Court system. and-
yeah.
are they worried about a liability, or is it a liability from the
From being
manufacturer or
sued?
liability as far as getting sued by like a patient? What's the
I think it's
concern?
patient perspective.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood.
I would keep it as long as you can.
Yeah, that could be years there.
Yeah, it is.
Storage unit.
Most facilities have like that storage area, that dead zone,
I
right?
mean,
If you can slide it in there.
If insurance wants it stored for a certain amount of time, insurance is going to cover those storage fees up until a point. But then when they're done with their investigation, they'll let you know, hey, we're done with it. And then that way, if your leadership wants to keep it for whatever reason, you can make arrangements at that point in time. But let insurance pick up that bill for as long as they will and as long as they can. I mean,
Because they'll store it off-site too.
Yeah, they'll store it off.
They-
The
they
engineer will
store
pick
it
it up,
off-site.
store it off-site for while they're doing theirs. If we're trying to go back against the manufacturer because it was a product defect, I mean, I've had stuff sitting in storage 3 or 4 years as we're going back to a manufacturer, so.
And it's
you know,
covered.
It's all covered.
All right.
Okay, again, these are part of your property risks. If you don't know your risk manager, make sure you get to know them. Like I said, they can be part of your friends too if they know the information of what's going on. Aging infrastructures, you know, if your building's old, make sure you have that documented, maintenance plans, that kind of thing. Like again, regulatory compliance, make sure you understand the state, federal laws, that kind of stuff. The Joint Commission laws, you know, the IP regulations and your company policies, they're all gonna come into play. And you have, like I said, half a day to address them or respond on them. So the more you have in place ahead of time, the better off you're gonna be.
Real quick comment, when you look at weather events, you're required to do a hazard vulnerability analysis each year. In the last couple of years, that should have increased if it wasn't up top. You gotta go on recent history. Don't let it bite you.
Any questions for the last couple of minutes?
Any questions, any answers, any comments?
Terry, one thing I want to mention, and I know a lot of our facilities have been expanded through the years, but the current plumbing code does require 2 potable water services to the hospital. And we do it a lot of different ways, okay, much like you were talking about. we've been encouraging folks as part of your plan to look at that, because like Roberts, we had something right there we could connect to. Other places we found on the other end of the campus, it was easier to bring that water line in and cross connect.
Yeah.
So it's really something that makes a huge difference, and it doesn't take a whole lot to look at that.
No, and it's under unique. If you're building new today, it's a have to. Like the building I was talking about, built in '84, it wasn't required, but look at what you can. I mean, just because it doesn't there now, don't mean you can't budget and have it. Like we said, an ounce of prevention today is worth millions of dollars in the future. All right. Any questions, comments? Appreciate you guys coming up.
Like I said, moving forward, if any of you guys need me to help you do a mitigation plan or have questions, concerns, I'll have some cards downstairs. You can call me. I don't charge for that. If I can't share my knowledge and help you guys do something better, then we're not helping anybody. Okay? So even with your contractor, that kind of stuff, if you call the cell after 10, it goes to her.
And I will answer.
But no, seriously, if you have any questions,
We'll get
concerns,
you what you need.
I have no problem coming out and sitting with you guys and your IH and your IP and your contractors. Again, we're all in the same business, you know. There's plenty of work for everybody, but we want to make sure everyone's doing it the right way and the safest way.